How important is it to stay lean for a startup? Because I don't think just starting off, the average person can hire five
Right.
employees or
No, look, and I think that I advise a lot of founders, and I think, look, you need to be really thoughtful around if you're going to do a money raise or if you're going to do things like that. Because I know a lot of, I know founders who have like 2% of their company. It's a really successful company and they're not making any money off of it.
wow.
Like for me, I didn't take any money. I just started, I kept it really lean. I'm actually deliberately anti scale because people have said, well, like, when are you going to get to 20 people? It's like, never.
I'd like to welcome you to the Corner Office Chronicles podcast. My name is Byron Benton, affectionately known as Byron the Product Enthusiast. This is dedicated to product management and entrepreneurship. So please, lend an ear, perhaps two. Tune into today's episode. All right, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Corner Office Chronicles podcast. My name is Byron, and I am your host. Today, I have a special guest. In some ways, uh, kind of like a mentor. I mean, you have led this same path that I would like to travel. I would love to learn more about you, sir, and I want everyone to learn as well. I'd like to welcome the legendary Stephen Gates. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good, Byron, man. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Hey, good to see you. How's that intro?
It was good. It was strong. I was gonna say a lot of people do it, and it's like sitting at your own obituary or something, right? I like it. It had a lot more enthusiasm and soul than what I usually get for those things. So no, it was good.
Okay. I know you say you don't have it long, but as long as I have you, try to get as many questions in as I can. Let
Yeah,
me
no,
ask
let's
you,
go.
how long have you been in product?
So look, I mean, I'd say, look, I've been in design probably literally my whole life, right? Like my dad was a creative director. I grew up at his agency. Um, yeah, I'm so old that I've been in product since before there was product, right? Like I developed stuff for the very first app store. I used to develop stuff on like old Motorola razors and all sorts of stuff. So I
Wow.
think, yeah, it makes me that old. But no, I've been doing it pretty much since the beginning.
Wow. That led me to another question. People that release apps, SaaS apps,
Yeah.
which I plan on doing very soon. I hope, if I can get everything, all the kinks ironed out. Are they any advice, tips? How can I make my product better than others when there are hundreds of thousands or at least thousands of maybe the same product?
I think two things, right? I think one is just what you said. Don't go out and copy what somebody else did. I think if you have an idea and you want to like do something different, that's what you need to do. And I think the other thing for me, the biggest thing is if you're going to go develop anything digital, any product, any whatever it is, like you need to go out and test it to try to get people to break it. Because I think too many people go out and they're basically looking for people to tell them that they're smart or that it's good and they're just looking for like the good comments. And I think the thing that I've always done is like, look, if I go out and try to really get good opinions and really get honest opinions, then I think your product is gonna be good right out of the gate. And I think the other thing that I've always done is I think like average people, like the average consumer, gives you average insights.
Mhm.
I've always tried to push that to the edge of I want to give it to somebody that's never used a SaaS app before, and I want to give it to somebody that uses one every day. Because I think for the people that have never done it, that's as close as you're ever going to get to real honesty, right? Because they've never used it before. They don't sort of understand workarounds and they're going to tell you the way it really is. And then the person that's that power user that really understands what's going to work, they're going to tell you if it's different. They're going to tell you what's good. They're going to tell you what's bad because they use it all the time. So
Mhm.
I think doing that usually sets you up to be pretty successful.
Okay. So let me ask you, you had a chance to work not only in corporate America, but your own products as well. What do you think
Mm-hmm.
has, I'm not gonna say prepared you because I'm sure both have, but what do you think made you a better product leader? Following someone else's protocol or having to take the bull by the horns and do your own thing like you're doing now?
I mean, look, I think both because I think you have to know the rules to know which ones you should break.
Mhm.
And so I think, look, I worked in ad agencies. I worked in corporate America. I worked as a consultant. I worked and now I kind of have my own studio. So I think, look, you learn from all of it. But I think a lot of what it is that, usually where you can differentiate yourself when you do your own products is you're willing to take more risk. You're willing to push the edges more. You're willing to go out and kind of take a bigger swing. Because, look, the reason why I walked away from corporate America was I just think like innovation and risk and creativity and corporate culture don't like to coexist,
Hmm.
right? Like corporate culture likes predictability. It likes, again, we know what it's going to do. We know, and a lot of big innovation, that's not the way you do it.
Hmm.
And you need to be able to take risks and get things wrong and learn and test and do a lot of those sort of things and move quickly. So again, I think I learned a lot through it, but I think, like I said, it taught me which are rules that are worth breaking and doing something different, and which are the ones where it's just like, yeah, we can break it, but it's just the juice isn't going to be worth the squeeze.
Let me ask you, who you think is more willing to take a risk? Some of the smaller companies or the larger companies? Because let's say if I had a product that's been working for 50 years, and and it's making money, you know, I think that some companies might not embrace change as much if it's already working. If it's not broken, why fix it?
Right.
What do you
Well,
think?
I mean, look, what I would say is I think either one could. But usually it's smaller companies, it's ones that are like, again, trying to be more the upstart, the disruptor. But usually what happens, right, whether it's small companies, big companies, anything in between, is that usually the problem isn't doing something disruptive. The problem is, what do you do after it worked?
Hmm.
Because like going into that, you're willing to break rules and try things and take risks. And then as soon as it works, everybody's like, don't change anything. And that kind of entrepreneurial spirit tends to go away and things become safer because we're afraid that we're going to screw up what we built.
Hmm.
And look, I'm a big believer. There's a difference between crazy and stupid. Like you don't want to make stupid decisions,
Hmm.
but I think that's often what it is that, that level of risk or experimentation or just trying things, people sort of fall into that. And look, the way I always sum it up is I used to have a poster that sat in my office when I worked in corporate America that said, comfort is the enemy of greatness. And that was why, was because like being comfortable or doing what you've always done or doing what's worked in the past is the surest way to not have something work in the future.
Hmm. Okay. Because I know you have a podcast as well, and I noticed that you recently changed your intro. You kind of revamped. Was that your entrepreneurial product uh, leadership mind thinking like, okay, let's make a change here?
I mean, look, I think this, I've had, so it's called The Crazy One. I've had the show for 8 years. And look, and I think, after the first 7 years, a lot of that was driven by being in corporate culture and a lot of different things that got associated with that. And the shows used to be like 40 or 45 minutes long. And I think I just got to a point where I felt like the audience and me and everybody else just, they wanted something more streamlined.
Yeah.
And so I just like, look, I don't have sponsors. I don't want sponsors. I don't want to like, would I like for people to listen to the show? Sure. But I think a lot of it for me was just like, look, how do I thin this down so that I'm more enthused to make the content? It's easier for people to listen to the content because it's just, look, the world changed. A couple of years ago when I made content, it was about 40 to 45 minutes long because that was about the length of an average commute.
Hmm.
Well, a lot of people aren't doing a commute anymore, and a lot of people have like less time. So part of it's also just sort of recognizing that, because I can see people are listening to the show in two parts. It's
Hmm.
like, okay, well, let's understand what that is, and if it's going to be better for both of us, then let's do it. And I think that probably is the product piece or the entrepreneurial piece. Is just like, look, just don't be afraid to pivot.
Okay. So speaking of the product world, most people I've known doing research on it, and from what I've seen, speaking with people, they might start off with, let's say, a business analysis, product analysis, go from a product owner, product manager, maybe the manager of product managers,
Hmm.
and eventually, once you find out that you can create successful products, do you think the end goal is to kind of, now that I've shown it, I can do it for a company. Let me create my own. I mean, what do you think? You think that's
I mean, look, I think, I've got here's the crazy ones tattooed on my right arm. So I'm always the one who kind of, look, and I always joke it, look, at least I advertise. But look, I think for me, the world needs more creative founders, right? The world needs more product founders. The world needs more people that understand what consumers want and how to build something that has that kind of appeal. And look, I think the barrier to entry has never been lower, either because of the tools that make it easy to
Yeah.
be able to get in there to be able to do that, the ability to use AI to be able to help you with coding, or right. So again, I think it is a moment where the world's sort of trying to refigure some of itself out. But look, I mean, I think for me, that's if you've got that moment and you feel like you've got a really differentiated idea, there's a lot of different ways to bring it to life. But I think that I've talked to too many people over the years. I just don't want to have a career where at some point I have a regret,
Yeah.
right? I wish I would have built that thing. I wish I would have launched that thing. I wish I would have said that thing, right?
Mm.
And I think that's where a lot of people are right now. I think that's why you see so many people are unhappy is that they feel like they can do more. And it's just either the fear that stops them or something else. So no, I think, look, if you've got that idea and you think, you've got it, that's the way, the companies that a lot of people idolize usually start.
Okay. So let's say if someone has that idea. Now, I think it is good to have um, maybe mentors or maybe not even mentors, let's say experts in their field, maybe expert
Hmm.
engineers, expert marketers. How important is their feedback as well? Or should a product leader be steadfast on what they want?
Yeah.
They're so visionary that no, this is where it's going to be. I understand what you're saying, but I just want you to do this.
I
How
mean, look, yeah, and look, I think what I always describe it as is strong beliefs loosely held. Because for me, like you need a personal board of directors, right? At least three people. You need one person that's absolutely going to tell you the truth, right? Whether you want to hear it or not. You need one person who's going to be your hype man or your hype woman to be able to keep you enthused and going whenever it gets tough. And I think you need somebody that's going to be that mentor, right? But look, I think this is a really toxic construct that a lot of people have created of this idea of they look at Steve Jobs or they look at somebody, it's like, oh, well, that was a singular vision.
hmm
Like, look, I've worked a ton with Apple. I know people who worked with Steve and stuff like that. Like, Steve was good at that vision, but I think Steve was also sort of good at understanding, how did you cut through the BS? What were the people you listened to? What were the people you didn't? How did you keep everybody focused? So, no, I think you need to be able to have a strong vision, but it can't be so strong that it blinds you to kind of other opinions and to be able to do those sort of things. So I think if you're able to get that support system and that kind of like little mini board of directors of people you can trust, that's usually the best approach to be able to do that. And I think you need people that will buy into and understand the vision to be able to say, okay, look, yeah, no, this is going to be a compromise, or look, you're holding on to this too tight and you need to look at this a little differently.
Okay. Okay. So what inspired you to, become an entrepreneur? Because part of being product is being entrepreneurial driven. I think what inspired your foray into, you know, being an entrepreneur, like
Yeah.
infusing that
I mean,
with.
look, I wish I could say there was some like Avengers origin story that was like, I had this vision and, I was going to go do it. It's not true. Look, I think for me, I worked in corporate America for a long time. I got laid off for the third time in my career.
Mhm.
And I just got to a place where I was just like, look, I don't want to go back and fix another broken product. I don't want to go back and fix another broken company. I don't. And so for me, it was just kind of like, look, what do I have to lose at this point? I just personally need something different because I think all of that had kind of broken me and I'd stayed in there too long. So that was really why it started. Was I just said, look, I feel like just like you said, I feel like I've got a different vision for how things could be, how we could do this sort of work, how we can create strategy and design and a lot of things like that. I think I can help enable other people that have these visions to help support them and bring them to life. So let's just try and see. And like I said, I think it was just that moment of just kind of being done and burnt out. And I don't know if it was being forced into it, but definitely just saying, look, I don't want to go back and just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Okay. How important is it to stay lean for a startup? Because I don't think, just starting off, the average person can hire
Right.
five employees or
No, look, and I think that I advise a lot of founders, and I think, look, you need to be really thoughtful around if you're going to do a money raise or if you're going to do things like that. Because I know a lot of, I know founders who have like 2% of their company. It's a really successful company and they're not making any money off of it.
wow.
like for me, I didn't take any money. I just started. I kept it really lean. I'm actually deliberately anti-scale
Mm.
because people have said, well, like when are you going to get to 20 people? It's like never. Like I kind of have seen this enough that I think scale to a certain point is good, but past that, it kind of screws things up. So like, look, for me, it started lean. I think I know that for me, I am not good at, and I should not be doing the accounting and doing the operations and the scheduling. Like, can I do it? Yes. Is that where we're going to make money? Am I going to be successful? Absolutely not. So again, I think I started as lean as I could and have tried to keep it there, especially with just the way the industry and everything is at right now. But I think a lot of like, look, for me, success has never been having an office. It's never been having a big team. It's never been right. Like this again, I advise leaders on this all the time, right? Like and busy and effective are not the same thing.
Mm.
And I've been a part of unicorn startups. I've been a part, and it's like, look, you find the one thing that sets you apart and you go all in on that and you drive it to scale. And then you start to branch out because what has killed more founders' dreams that I've worked with have been they're like, oh, what about this? What about this? Let's do 16 things. Let's hire 20 people. Let's get, a floor of an office building. And then all of a sudden it's like 6 months later, they're like, oh, yeah, nope, I had to fire everybody. We gave up the office and I'm having to start over again. So like it's okay to go slow, right? Like it's okay to be able to just build it as you go because I think that's going to be seen far more as success than if you just have these like big peaks and valleys and you go into it with like, oh, I need to look successful. Like, you know what's better than looking successful? Being successful.
I agree. I agree. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur?
I think that sort of what I said before. Look, I think whatever you think it's going to be, it probably isn't. I think like you've got to pivot just because look, what I've wanted changes. The world has changed. The industry has changed. Clients have changed, right? Like just I mean, good Lord, in 3 years, you look at where we were 3 years ago with what AI was doing to product and design. It's a completely different world with where we are today.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I think you need to figure out what do you want to evolve and what do you stay true to. I think that, especially if you're going to go out on your own, you've got to make sure you got that support system, right? You've got to make sure that there's people you can talk to, that you've got advisors. Because one of the first things that you tend to lose is like when I'm working at a company, I can see other product managers, I can see other leaders, I can kind of get a sense of how I'm doing, I can do a lot of those sort of things. And now all that's taken away.
Hmm.
And so sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But I think, again, trying to keep some grounding in what that is. And also, I think just trying to set a little bit of a healthy boundary because, like, look, I'm coming out of had the best financial year of my entire career last year, but also worked 7 days a week for 6 months to be able to do it. So it was like probably too far.
Wow.
And look, and that's the biggest thing I tell founders time after time again is like, look, if you're going to start, what you need is a plan, not the answer,
Mm.
right? I think too many people, they won't start because they think they need to have it all figured out. Or whenever they do it, they're like, oh, I've got to. It's just like, look, what you need to do is just constantly have a plan of like, what do I think I want to do next? And to be able to kind of work through that so that even you kind of keep a view of that vision. But it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be able to go through and do. Look, there's definitely like, I don't love chasing invoices or doing new business, but that's fine. That's part of the deal. But no, for me, it's a hell of a ride. And I haven't been this happy in 10 or 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. You look like it. You're glowing. Let me ask you. We mentioned the fact that you didn't say that you didn't really believe in scaling, but you're not too big on scaling. What happens if and you could be this way right now? I don't know. You could make 10 million a year right now, but let's say if you don't, let's say you don't right now, and your business
Yeah.
starts to make, let's say, 10 million a year. Do you think at that point you have to scale, or would you prefer to tone it down a bit and not get all that revenue?
Well, that's what I said. I mean, for me, it's just like scale and financial results aren't the same as being happy. Right now, look, financial results goes a long way to helping a hell of a lot. But look, I think part of what the special sauce is the ability to actually be hands-on, to be able to bring that experience, to like Could I potentially find other people? Yes. Is that going to be a long process? Yes. Am I closed off to it? Not completely. But I just think, look, for me, that's just not the vision of what I want to build. Is something that's that big because I've been there, right? Look, I've had teams from 2 people to 500.
Mm.
And I can tell you, whenever it was those bigger teams, I've turned into like more of a politician and interventionist and therapist
Mm.
than I was doing what I'm really good at.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it for me is I don't really want to get back to that. So can it scale some? Yeah. But again, I think it's just also, it's an old saying, but more money's more problems. So
Yeah,
I think for me, it's trying to find that right balance.
but you're not going to turn it down. I mean, right? Let's say if you create this thing, you can't help that 2 million people like it. You're not about to be, not,
No,
don't
no.
like my
I mean,
product.
look, I think if it needs to go there and if it needs to scale like that, then we'll do what we need to do, right? And I think,
Yeah,
look, there's other options. You can take it to scale. You can stay with it. You can sell it off. You can take an advisory role,
that
right?
is
Like
true.
there's other. It's a good problem to have,
That is a good problem.
right?
Great problem to
Yeah.
have.
So I'm like, look, I would love to be able to like come back on this show in a year and be like, okay, look, I did it, and here's the answer.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you. Do you think AI is a startup's best friend? How has it changed the game, made it more accessible for people that didn't have access to be in the lane of success to potentially be successful?
Yes and no, right? Like, has it made things more accessible? Has it made it easier? Has it changed the landscape? Absolutely. Right. I think what engineering and design and things like that has done, 100%, it's changed it. But no, in that it is not the magic bullet that too many founders and too many CEOs think it is. Right. And I think that a lot of them right now are trying to do this thing where it's like, we don't need as many people. We don't know, like, oh, well, AI will have all the answers. You still need the people, right? Because I think like it's good at copying, like, yeah, if you want to make a Simpsons ripoff, great. It'll go do that. If you want to create the next Simpsons, you're probably going to need people to think through to tell that story, to come up with the product, to find the insights. So, like, does it help more on the creation side and those things? Yes. Is it a replacement if you actually want to do something different? No. And I think that's a lot of the opinions I see around because, look, we use AI a ton. And I think that's a lot of what you see is people who think it's like, oh, you're a lazy creator, you're a lazy product person if you use it. In some cases, they're right, right? Like if you use it to write all your product requirements and you aren't thinking about any of that stuff, yeah, you're lazy, right? Like you could use it as the starting point. But like I said, does it help? Yes. Will it replace like real creativity and real insight and leadership? No.
Okay. How do you balance, you know, as an entrepreneur, is there such thing as work-life balance? Or is it that, you know, you eating a whatever, let's say piece of fruit to let's say
Yeah.
a tomato sandwich with some lettuce on top of it, while you're, look going over product things. Is
Yeah.
that become like life? Or do you think there's a difference between work-life balance? Or if you love what you do, is
Yeah.
there such a thing as different? Yeah, as being different.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think so. Unfortunately, because of time, this will have to be my last question. But look, I think look, if your first concern about being an entrepreneur is work life balance, you're going to be in trouble, right? Just because look, there are times when you need to do what you need to do to make it successful. Like if you're going to be the one, like if you want to be able to go in and do this and just work 40 hours a week, this isn't the spot, right? Like again, I'm not saying it should be 70 or 80 hours a week, but look, I mean, you've got to do what you got to do, and yeah, there are times whenever it does turn into 7 days a week or whatever it is, just to hit a get deadline or get to that next milestone or to keep a promise to somebody on what you're going to do. So like I think I said before, it's sort of up to you for how much work-life balance you want to do, how fast you want to grow, what do you want your income to look like. It's all about trade-offs. And I think if you can be clear on what those trade-offs are, like, yeah, if you want, $10 million in revenue in 6 months, you're probably not going to be taking many weekends off.
All right, okay, and I know you have to go. Last thing,
Yeah.
if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Yeah. So one is, like I said, you can find my podcast on basically any platform. So just put in the crazy one. You can find me there. And again, we do a ton of strategy, design, product consulting, things like that. If you have any interest in that, you can find it at Crazy Design. It's CRZY design.com. And you can see our work and what we do and get in touch with us there.
All right. Thank you very much for joining the podcast, sir.
Sure thing. It was good seeing you.
You too.
So thanks for watching today's episode of the Corner Office Chronicles podcast. Again, my name is Byron Benton, and I am your host, affectionately known as Byron the Product Enthusiast. Please like, subscribe, and tune in. Until the next time, thanks for watching.